All right, so thank you and welcome to the third version of the Crux podcast. I'm very pleased to have with me Chris Bryce, the CEO and Chief Strategist of DotFusion. He is also an integration partner with Salesforce, Adobe, Agility CMS, and Sapient Razorfish. And I have to say that I've been pumping you for free information since 2005 on all things digital. So it's only appropriate that I bring you on here to share it with the rest of the world. So welcome, Chris.
Cool. Nice to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, so just as a further quick introduction, the great thing about web development and Chris is you can actually see his work with sites that he built for Cirque du Soleil, Intuit Canada, and many more. And I'll put those in the comments section so you can go there and see some of his clients and some of the great sites that he's built. So Chris, I think the best way to start is I talked about knowing you from 2005. You've been doing it for way longer than that. How did you get into things like this so early? And tell me about the journey.
Well, it started mostly by accident when I was working for a nonprofit that had a desire to be innovative, and we wanted to create a CD-ROM for our organization. And at that time, CD-ROMs were really cool. So during that process,
you may have to explain what a CD-ROM is for some of the audience.
Shiny object often used as like a reflective device in third world countries.
Yeah, there you go, or frisbee.
So one thing led to another, and I was personally curious about how to create kind of interactive marketing experiences within that CD-ROM media, and that was just at the time. Websites were becoming a visual communication platform. So I wound up getting involved at the University of California in Irvine in their digital arts programs, fostering kind of technology skills with art students from around the world that were just kind of learning to create using computers and other kind of digital software formats. Mm-hmm. So one thing led to another, and we were authoring code for CDs, and that led to writing some HTML and understanding how the web worked. And I met my business partner in California while I was there, and she kind of owned the design, and I was doing a little bit of coding back then. And luck would have it, we had an opportunity to create some large websites in Canada, and we built our business around that. So we've been really, really interested in the intersection of aesthetic experiences and user experience design and creating interfaces that really make a digital product work, in combination with the precision code that lies underneath digital products and the integrations onto marketing, content, or other business platforms. So yeah, I like the idea of straddling this concept of aesthetic experiences that are compelling and memorable, and building large products on enterprise platforms that really drive business forward. So, yeah.
Great. And now you say back then. You got to say what that means, because some people think, 2012.
Oh, no, back then was like 1994 or something like that.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Man, was that like Mosaic? Like what were people using back then?
That was some Netscape and some Dogpile Search, if I recall. And
wow.
It was fun because there was true innovation and experimentation going on, pushing the limits of what the tools and the code were capable of. It was also the onset of thinking around how do people wrap their minds around getting something done, in an experience on a screen. And that was pre-phone as well. So we were mostly concerned.
I love all these terms. This is great.
We were concerned with just things would work. Like I remember putting together this interactive presentation in front of 1,000 people at the Orange County Multimedia Association get together thing, and the big thing was clicking from one screen through a video to another and just hoping like the video would work, because we'd need like a fantastically large hard drive and a lot of hardware to power the experiences. And the cool thing today is how quickly you can build complex technology products, and how quickly the production process is, and just that really rapid speed to market to get an idea out and into the wild. We can really be swift these days.
That's awesome. And it's funny what you said. People forget that there was not Squarespace or GoDaddy, and you could just take something out of a box and make some pretty site. I mean, it probably was a lot of Frankensteining pieces together and hoping and praying, right?
Yeah, I mean, the code was much more simple, but it does kind of have a direct relationship to the capabilities of the browser or the server that's kind of running that code engine. So, transition to today, and, there's 4 or 5 completely different tech stacks that we can choose to build on depending on what we're trying to do. Platforms make things much easier and even quicker to get things to market, because a lot of the components and the functional bits and pieces are already built somewhere. So our job is really to kind of align some business solution with the client's operational aspects so they can get more things done quicker. And then ideally, if the world is perfect for us, it also has a requirement for a branded and somewhat beautiful experience on the front end as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, in that regard, you're getting into some sort of more technical pieces there. And I mean, you're much more expert than this. And I've always just turned to you whenever a client or myself needed this. I found that companies, they have a website just to not have nothing. And then it really is sort of the last place that they choose to put dollars. So all these, when you're talking about these technical aspects of a website, what are your thoughts of how you would tell an executive or someone to say, you've got to put some dollars and thought behind this and your user experience?
Yeah, 2 parts to that question, I guess. So when we take a look at how to approach a client, for example, we see they come in 2 different, I guess, categories. Ideally, we look for clients who have gone through the process of building a digital product before, because it's such an educational experience to manage the gaps of what the expectations are from the product, which also relates to your question, which is around the investment and the costs. So for a team that is considering an investment in a digital product, whether it's an app or a website or a piece of custom software, a digital thing, if they don't have the experience in understanding the incredible detail involved in the workflow of getting a product off the ground, it's hard to understand how budgets are applied to that amount of effort. And there is a lot of information that would suggest that these type of things are fairly easy to do. And when you start to blow out the process and the method, and that there isn't a magical moment where this thing comes out of a hat and it's done. Right. Every little thing that has an action or an activity or an integration or that communicates data on your phone or on your screen has to be connected somewhere to something that's also connected to something else. So the challenge around the investment is there's often a business case missing and a proper scope and requirements with a budget involved. So if there's a business case that would suggest that over 3 years after this investment is made, there's $1 million upside, and spending $500,000 in that makes sense. But there's also this feeling of being constantly in a hurry on the client side. So extending that forecast out to 2 or 3 years from an investment perspective typically is just not something that is ever sketched out. So there's an immediacy of firing something up. Also, decision-making teams are somewhat transient. You know, these projects can take a year to 2 years to get off the ground. You know, those, you know, decision-making stakeholders move on, get replaced. You know, there's a lot of stop and start and change, which is really the reason for the advent of this kind of agile thinking, where let's just keep building things and adding to this, you know, product that makes sense over time, regardless of who's leading the ship. We have kind of a clear direction of the business case we're trying to solve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, so my next question would be, where I try to lead people when I'm convincing them to open their wallets is, you know, then how do you articulate that ROI then? Because no one's going to change unless they really realize they're missing something. Or do you articulate the price and the cost of not doing anything? Like, it'll cost you, your competition will go past you. How do you articulate that? And I'm sure it differs, but give me an example of how you would paint an ROI for one of your clients that you already had, or a future one that you would hypothetically talk to.
For sure. For example, one of our favorite clients is Canadian Place, which is a large, I think the tallest office building in Toronto. It's a mixed-use property, 10,000 tenants, 3 floors of retail, and food service space, along with an arts and events program. And the business case for a constantly evolving and engaging digital property is kind of matching up the evolution of their web presence with the 3 core tenets of their business plan, which is to attract and maintain the core tenants of that building as they have their experiences in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening, to stay in that building and to be not only just spending their money in the building, mm-hmm. but to be serviced and welcomed, and to have them understand that the value of being in that building is being demonstrated by this collection of opportunities to be entertained and enjoy your experience, you know, outside of the work hours. So that was kind of like business case one, is keep these folks in the building so they're not only just spending their money, but we're providing value to them as a place to call home during the day. So there's an investment in that and a way to calculate the return. But more importantly is, how do we go into kind of the competitive space where we have 10 other large buildings right next door? You know, how do we attract the tenants from those buildings over to First Canadian Place during, you know, the off work hours, and keep the merchants and the service providers really busy and re-signing their leases in the kind of shops and restaurant space. So we can build a business case around that. And then third, with the increasingly dense population in Toronto, mostly around condo dwellers and the, you know, constantly new and vast amounts of new people living in the downtown core, we have a whole other opportunity of having the digital experience for First Canadian Place, including digital marketing and what happens after you see some kind of ad or marketing communication. You come to the website and understand that there's all of these cool things to do in this building. So we're able to reach kind of our third target, which is the downtown condo dweller, and bring them into, I guess, what is a fairly contemporary shopping and dining experience, which evolves around being in a large building. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say is we have the ability to have our technology measurably drive traffic from 3 different cohorts into this building.
Gotcha. And so you talked a bit about one type of client. Is there a certain type of business, or is there certain verticals that really have a bigger pain point with their web presence than others, that you kind of either make for better clients or have, you know, would say should basically have more urgency?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is a pure play e-commerce client. So you have a large space full of products, and you need to get those products into people's homes.
Mm.
So an e-commerce client makes our job of selling advanced features, functionality, and unique experiences a little bit easier. Especially if we're also applying some data science to what we're delivering and squeezing out, another 2 to 3% conversion through a variety of different taxes. Makes a clear case for coming out with that investment. It's a little bit more tricky when we're just dealing with creating a purely evolved brand experience from just a communications perspective, where the website isn't directly selling something, but it's part of the attribution of all things that lead to a sale. And in that case, it's a little bit more around, doing a better job at taking folks from a referral source, be it an ad or a partner or whatever that is that's getting the folks to the site, and how are we sure that we're, really engaging, leaving a memorable experience with them, moving them through some content in the way that they want to experience it, either going on kind of a content adventure or being able to find exactly what they're looking for quickly. And then somehow further down the line, attributing them to a sale or, I guess, a state of advocacy for that brand. Yeah, so that gets a little bit more fuzzy. So in that case, what we would do is do some comparisons, and we'd look at competitors, and we'd find pain points in what the competitors are offering and show how we've solved for those on the current project.
No, and that actually, I mean, for the longest time, it was like brand and look was so important about a website. And that was kind of like, well, that's what happens once you're there. You talked about all the intricate parts and sort of the plumbing. What parts of what you build help with like organic search, or what happens before someone comes to the website? Is that something you help improve as well?
Yeah, I think where our experience has helped in the past is setting up the infrastructure for, let's say we're talking about a website right now, so that an expert SEO team can come in and, with no further technical needs or resource burden, be able to experiment and test out all of those kind of advanced kind of on-page search tactics, including, not just controlling kind of tag data, but also meta and schema data, and really extending the capabilities of content platforms beyond simply, I guess, the corporate authoring, and providing opportunities for very advanced SEO work within, structured data and programmatic data as well. So I think we pride ourselves on really leveraging CMS capabilities beyond kind of the marketing or product owner, and extending that to like full strategic marketing teams as well, and trying to eliminate as much technical resources to help with, I guess, things that should be considered contemporary right now, which are, being able to facilitate all your SEO.
Yeah.
Within
Now you
SEO.
mentioned CMS, which of course means content management system.
Yeah.
You had a really cool partnership, which we mentioned before, with Agility. Now talk about that a little bit, and what that adds to your offering beyond all these amazing things you already detailed.
Yeah, for sure. So I kind of getting back to that point of what we're all about, which is delivering this kind of really pleasing, beautiful, memorable type of thing, where we get to create stuff and, extend our JavaScript capabilities and make interactions really cool. The other half of the business is ensuring that after we roll off the project and the client is left with their product or their website, is that the architecture and the planning of the content system and the ability to manage content is not only really easy and enjoyable by core content teams on the client side, but that it's very easy to use, and that the structure of the content all makes sense as it's interrelated together, and that bits and pieces of components can be reused, and content libraries have been thought out, and the I guess the authoring workflows are in place. It's often overlooked, where typically it's not just a resource, putting some copy and an image on a page. It could be a resource that needs to find some information from another system, compile it into a piece of content in collaboration with someone else, and it then needs to go through kind of legal approval, perhaps translation, then a final approval, and then another little bit of regionalized content needs to be dynamically put into that piece before it actually gets published. So as you begin to work with larger organizations that have more governance and compliance requirements around content, the ability to simply post and publish something, although is really important, it's equally important to think through creating a system and customizing the back end so it's easy to use and is compliant with current workflows. We're often brought into projects to do next gen, which is really great for us because we're working with a team that has also experienced a digital product before, and they kind of know the challenges involved and the extended thinking required. So yeah, it's a fairly strategic and project that needs to be well planned, which, way back to your original point, is one of the challenges around budgets. The concept of what the budget should be for a fairly novice product owner on the client side is kind of the tip of the iceberg, and it's really our job to thoughtfully and through educational consulting really communicate the girth of these things, which also relates to why they can cost a little bit more than originally expected.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think you state things that, even though for me, I've been in this space for so long, since like 99, you kind of gloss over all the hard work that goes into the build up and then the management of these systems. And especially with the amount of content people are trying to curate on their sites now, I don't think people realize how much could go wrong, how much heavy lifting there is. And then there's that support piece that, until you started talking to me about it with a recent client, I didn't even know it was so hard. So, definitely recommend you keep reminding people as sort of that trusted advisor to keep aware of some of the pain that they might feel later. So definitely interesting, and awesome things it sounds like with what you're doing with agility. Last question I had was, how has mobile changed things? I mean, that's, they're saying some people don't even go to a desktop website anymore. How are you helping clients? And I mean, how different is it other than just having a mobile ready app or usable site on your phone?
Yeah, really interesting question. And the first thing that comes to mind is a real and thorough understanding of the end user cohorts. For example, we're working on a project creating design systems and playbooks for a property development company. So, through very little research, we came to understand, at the onset when we're building out our strategy, that 80 to 90% of the visits are still coming from a desktop browser, because these are architects and engineers, and they're in an environment with a wide screen. So we have a little bit more liberty to create things a little bit more boldly and vertically. On the other hand, we have operations in Phnom Penh in Cambodia, where we're servicing Hong Kong and Singapore and that part of the world. And in many of those surrounding countries, they have skipped over desktops, laptops completely and just use the phone. Right. And in Cambodia, for example, they've skipped over websites. There is no need to have a website, generally speaking, because you can do most of what you need to do on Facebook.
Yeah.
So the chatbot stuff, the AI is all around Facebook, components and products. So it's a completely different experience based on where your target customer is and how they engage. But yeah, so I guess the great side of mobile is if you're kind of tapping into native functionality, there's a few more things you can do from a keeping folks sticky perspective, especially if you're kind of aligning your product with an app install. But I guess to your point, you just really have to know where most of your folks are going to be engaging and consuming your content.
Awesome. Well, on my podcast, I try to leave someone with an exercise or two. And you're the expert here, so you get to come with the exercises. What would you suggest if someone's kind of knows that their site's a little tired or needs, or maybe they don't, how would you suggest that someone needs to maybe feel a little more urgency? Or is it simply like, find someone like you to talk to and just kind of give it a once over and get suggestions before, they try to figure out what their budget is for next year?
Yeah, well, that's a combination of things. I think pragmatically, it all starts with a business case. And the solution to the business case can be aesthetic. It could be an integration with technology, building out a more robust CRM, adding automation to processes. But it really starts with a pain point, because you basically, that internal resource or stakeholder is going to be building a case around that pain point or opportunity for business growth, or some kind of advancement on a KPI system. And maybe it's a good thing to point out too, that not all of these technology products need to be built for increasing profits or getting more customers or selling more of a thing. Something that we also care a lot about here is building technology that has some kind of humanitarian impact. So I guess at the end of the day, when you're making this decision, there's a problem of some kind. And, there's usually a technology component to the solution. And I think where we like to start out with is helping clients kind of map out where technology is a sensible and I guess impactful part of that overall solution. Yeah. And then once that's clear, it's fairly easy to fill in and find budgets, whether we're just immediately solving the problem or if we're extending the product out to be innovative and experimental and that type of thing. So, yeah.
I liked one thing you said is my exercise I'll leave people with, which is pick your 5 competitors and look at their sites. Do you feel theirs is better? And sometimes you just need that kind of embarrassing kick in the butt to see if someone went to me and my 5 competitors without any other criteria, what would they feel?
Right. So I like that. I may add that to my list of.
Yeah. No, listen, coaching a little bit of not shame, but reminding people of what is just noticed as critical feedback sometimes is the best advice you can give, because if people brush it under the rug, they're avoiding the obvious. And the other thing I was asking about SEO for is I talked about mindshare in a previous episode. And, sometimes you type in your company and it's like Google says, oh, you're 28th in this search criteria. And it's like, man, I need to be found better. And so definitely user experience and your sort of, development capabilities that you can bring to companies is things that, just help people have their companies avoid dead weight that just make their goals harder. So I really appreciate you joining me here on the podcast, and definitely, looking forward to hearing more about your journey. And as soon as the whole landscape changes again, I'll have you back to explain all the newest stuff. How about that?
Awesome, man. Cool. Thanks a lot. That was really fun.
Got it.